Well, good morning. How you feeling, Steve?
I'm feeling great. And I noticed you said good morning. This is, I believe, our first morning podcast.
It is the first time that we've sat down in the morning time, and we're going to explain where we are. We're going to explain what we're all about. We just want to welcome everybody to our Move the Needle podcast here today. And today, a little bit of an intention, right? Like we sought out this place through a partnership with Vitalent because we want to highlight some of the work that's being done here behind closed doors. You're like, where's here? Where are you guys?
Where's the coordination going?
We're the donor network of Arizona.
Yes.
Easy for me to say, right? I'm playing a little hurt today, Steve. I'm not gonna lie. We shouldn't lie to the audience. I'm a little out of sorts. I feel fine. I just had a procedure done yesterday, and it's like, it's kind of got my attention, if you will. And we all appreciate you being here. And I've told a story to our guests that I liken Matthew today to a hockey line mate that's showing up a little hurt. We know he's not 100%, but he's still suited up instead of staying in the locker room and giving it his all. So we appreciate you. I'm playing hurt, not injured. Playing hurt, not injured. Yeah, right. You're here. I'm okay. I'm going to be fine, but I had a little ear procedure done, and it turns out the ear is really sensitive, especially when they take like an inch away from it. So, anyways, interestingly enough, I mean, your ear, but again, like imagine if it was a different procedure yesterday, and we're here at DNA, and you need blood. I mean, that's where we're going to talk about situations like that. It's one of the reasons I showed up today, because I thought, all right, what are they doing here, right? They're transplanting organs. All right, I had a little skin lopped off my ear yesterday. I'm not real comfortable, but, I can push through. We're going to sit down with a dude today who had a double lung transplant. Okay, so serious business. The inch of skin off my ear, in the big scheme of things, not that big of a deal. We'll push through. Yeah. Yes, okay. You're still being tough.
At Keystone Montessori, we know the new school year brings new possibilities. There is excitement and joy throughout campus as we prepare for the children's return, and we invite you to join us. In our classrooms, students experience the thrill of discovery, support of dedicated Montessori guides, and a balance of freedom with responsibility. We believe creating a world that can live in peace begins with our children. Make this year memorable and join the Keystone community. Call 480-460-7312 today and begin your Montessori journey.
Hi, I'm Amy Richardson, owner-agent at the Savvy Realty Group. How long will your Ahwatukee home be on the market? In a hot market, and I don't mean the heat of our summers, where there's limited inventory, meaning there are more buyers than homes to purchase, you can actually expect your home to sell in just a few days. Although, I highly recommend for allowing the home to have the proper marketing time so you can get the most amount of offers with the very best terms. Well, let's bring in Sara Pace-Jones. She's going to be our very first guest here today. She's the Vice President of Development and Referral Services at Donor Network of Arizona. So first up, good morning.
Good morning.
What does that title mean? What does it mean for you day to day? What are you doing?
I'm one of the executives here at Donor Network of Arizona who helps lead our teams who do a variety of things in the community, both the healthcare community as well as the public community, to spread the important word of the generosity that can be shared through the gift of life.
Okay, so does everybody in the executive team have to rock the red shoes, or is that your touch?
Yeah, that's my touch.
That's your
Just
touch.
a little bit of red shoes for the new year.
I like it. No, it's good. And when you think about the Donor Network of Arizona, at least for me, the first thing that I go to is that day that you get your driver's license. You're 16 years old for most people, and there's that box on the back, and it says, "Do you want to be an organ donor?" To me, that's the first touch point most people probably have with donor services in general, right?
Right. I think unless they've seen it on television, right, a lot of dramatic television shows feature organ donation or organ transplantation. Unless it's happened to their family, a lot of people, the first time they think about it is when they see that question on the driver's license application.
And then, so as far as you can tell from your vantage point, what are those determining factors that allow people to check that box? I believe I'm an organ donor. I don't know if you are, Steve.
I don't know if I am.
Yeah, we need to check,
since
right?
you're just saying that.
making you think.
It's funny you brought that up because it's not such an easy question. So for some people it is, and some people it's not. And
That's for sure.
I'm interested to hear about that. How many people just, you just check the box on
who's in, who's out,
who's in,
right?
who's out. Because I should know that, but I don't.
Right. We have right around 60% of the adult population in Arizona who are registered donors. So people who've had that chance during their lifetime to check that box and who have said, yes, I think if you think about it, right, if we were to ask you if you had the opportunity to save a life, would you do it?
Well, for me, the answer is unequivocally yes. The barriers probably come in the same way they do for blood donations. There's some cultural implications here for some groups of people, right? Some people are just not going to let you open them up and take out their liver and give it to somebody else based on a religious belief, a cultural belief. What are some of the other obstacles that you face in terms of, and I use obstacles lightly, like I'm not trying to disparage anybody who has that belief, but I'm saying what are those things that you come up against for reasons why maybe the other 40% aren't participating?
Sure, and it's one of the reasons why we do so much work in the community. We want to connect with communities and learn what are the reasons why people have not said yes to donation yet. One of the things that we learn is sometimes people are afraid, right? Donation, organ donation, the type of organ donation we coordinate happens after a person dies, right? So there's all the things that people think about or don't want to think about regarding their own mortality. Sometimes people are afraid, gosh, if I sign up to be a donor, would the ER or will the paramedics try to save my life? Or will they think, oh, this person has healthy organs and we could transplant that?
I never even considered
that thought before.
That's interesting she said that. But as soon as she's saying that, I'm like, yeah, they kind of have movies about that. Let's call it what is it. I mean, people, are steal organs on the.
Oh, sure.
So it's
there's a black. Are we going to talk about
so
the black market
it's
of
a
organ
high
donor
demand.
today?
It's a high demand item, and you could see where some people say like, well, maybe they'd jump.
Yeah, but hold on,
jump
Steve.
on
That's
easy.
not a truth, Sarah. Like,
people are afraid. Thank you.
They are afraid, but that's not a truth. There's not an
Right.
EMT on planet Earth that's working on you, looks at your driver's license and goes, organ donor. Oh, we should just let this one go and see what he's got inside, right? Like, that's not happening.
No, because they may need the organ. They may be the person that needs the organ, right?
I have really two answers to that. So it is not true. There's not a black market in the United States for organ
There's not.
donation and transplantation. There is not.
Great to know.
And
It's movies.
right, that is dramatic television, that's movies. And there is a formalized system, a very structured system for donation that has to happen for a person to be a donor. So I generally tell people two things. Number one, I should have brought my driver's license over here, but my heart is on my driver's license. I do not have a fear at all about how my treatment, what kind of treatment I will receive if I am in an accident when I have the heart on the license. The second thing I know is that an organ needs to be healthy to be transplanted. So rather than a paramedic or a hospital letting a person die, they actually need to take steps to keep the organs healthy, and that helps the person.
This is good.
So,
This is
right,
good.
a person must receive the best treatment in order to eventually be an organ donor and save somebody's life, like Bob, who you're going to meet a little bit
That's why
later.
she's on the executive team, Steve.
Exactly opposite of that.
It is the opposite. You will receive excellent treatment.
Yeah, so I'm so curious about the process, all right? And so let's just, can we get right to the sticky stuff?
Sure.
Let's go. So XYZ gets in a car accident, dies. They're an organ donor. How quickly do people get in that body and start, grabbing out what they need for somebody else?
So there is a process.
Is that a messy question or what? I love it.
Dive right in.
Yeah, let's dive right in. Let's talk about how we recover organs for transplantation. So if a person were to be critically injured in an accident, taken to a hospital, die at the hospital, they would be maintained on a ventilator for a time where their organs would continue to function until someone had a conversation with their family, either about the decision that person made to be a donor or about the family making the decision if the person didn't make a decision for themselves. Following that conversation, donation can proceed with authorization, but it will take some time. So an organ donor, only about 1% of all deaths can result in organ donation, which is one of the reasons it's so important for everybody to sign up, because a person has to die in a very specific way that allows the organs to be maintained until a recovery and eventual transplant can take place. Now, many more people can donate things like skin that can help burn patients or help trauma patients, bone, corneas to help a person see. That can happen a little bit differently. So if someone dies on a scene of an accident, so more people can be a tissue or eye donor, and they help thousands upon thousands of people every year.
Interesting. I would have never even thought about the skin part of it, but
right.
Of course, what's the largest organ in our body?
Exactly.
Is our skin. And so, okay, so we there's so many questions that I don't even like. This is a subject I don't even know what to ask.
Sure.
Right? Because there's so many webs that are up there spinning around. Do you have something that you want to ask?
So we're in this beautiful facility, and I know you've been here for a long time. I've read that there's been obviously some state-of-the-art advancement here. One with immunogenics laboratory that you guys have added, and has that helped connect the dots that we're talking about? The donors.
What is immunogenics?
Well, I want to know a little bit about it. It seems like it's a long word, but I don't want to guess. I want to know.
Sure. Our immunogenetics laboratory helps us provide the best matches. So, right, they are looking at the genetic markers of a donor to ensure they have the best match with potential recipients.
It's not a partnership with Isogenics.
No, it is not.
Did I say that? That was a long word.
It's a little intimidating. You articulated a little differently. You said, how did you describe it?
It's really genetic, right? It's immunogenetic, so it's looking at how will an organ match with the recipient. The kidney in particular is quite sensitive to a person's genetic makeup. You hear about transplant recipients having to take immunosuppressive drugs in order for their body to accept the organ. The better match we can get, particularly with kidneys, the better that recipient will do.
Can I divert a little bit? What's the most common organ that people to give up typically?
Right.
Is it skin?
Certainly tissues, corneas are most commonly donated because more people who die in a way that allows for that type of donation. When you talk about organ donation, kidney is the organ that is most in need. In fact, about 2/3 of the national transplant waiting list are people waiting for kidney transplants. Couple reasons for that. The diseases that lead to the need for kidney transplant, diabetes, hypertension, things that are common. Also, someone who is in kidney failure can be on dialysis to extend their life until a kidney becomes available. Those options aren't available for someone who needs a heart transplant. If someone needs a heart transplant, they need it fairly quickly. Or when you learn Bob's story, someone who needs a lung transplant, they need a donor when they need a donor, or they may not survive.
Okay. How long does it take? How long do people sit on a donor list? Is there sort of an average wait time? And then I guess it's different for everybody. But what at point does it get really scary for families?
I think so. I don't know the exact wait times. I know that for someone waiting for a kidney transplant, it can be 5 to 7 years. I mean, a very long time waiting for that call, right? They're waiting to pick up the phone and hear your life's going to be different. You don't have to go to the dialysis center 3 times a week anymore. You're just going to get to live your life, right? For someone waiting for a lung transplant, as I mentioned, and you can ask Bob about his wait, the waiting time is typically less, and then the sicker a person gets, the more priority they get on the waiting list so they can get that transplant before they die.
Question. I have so many questions. Do you mind if I just keep firing? I'm so interested in this. Is there an age restriction? Like can a 50-year-old man grab a 15-year-old kidney? How does that all work? Do you understand that
Yeah,
landscape?
I understand what you're asking about. Yeah.
Thank you for playing along today. You're so generous.
So the transplant waiting list, which is kind of a misnomer because it's not a waiting list, it's a database of patients waiting for an organ transplant. When a donor becomes available, let's say Donor Network of Arizona has been called by a hospital, patient has died, the family authorizes donation. So we begin the process of entering the donor's profile into the national database, and the database begins to place the organs with the best match for that organ, maybe blood type, maybe size, the best distance to ensure that the organ can travel safely to that location, to that recipient, and still be possible to be transplanted. And so all of those factors go in, and the system begins to place organs with transplant doctors who can accept them. So,
yeah, my question is on that system. Has technology advanced in other sectors?
Significantly. I think you mentioned I've been here a long time. I've been at DNA for 27 years. When I started at Donor Network of Arizona, that process I just explained, we would we would call in the information. We would get a fax on that shiny fax paper back of the patients waiting, and we would have to make phone calls to the transplant centers, not to the patients. Right? Donor Network of Arizona is an independent organization that really stands between hospitals and transplant centers, and we're the ones who coordinate the donation process. It's really three distinct areas, not necessarily how it's shown on television or in other venues.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how many times is there a little cooler full of somebody's liver and it's getting on a helicopter and it's being flown to is that still happening quite a bit?
I wouldn't say quite a bit, but that absolutely happens, and coolers are used, right? Keeping organs at the right temperature before they're transplanted is incredibly important, and transportation of organs is incredibly important. So they go by planes, trains, and automobiles, literally.
When you work here, do you get to hold on to a heart or their lungs, or they don't bring the organs around just for show and tell?
No, absolutely not.
Nothing like that. I'm kidding, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It sounds like there would be a culture, and I've got a culture question. We've talked with several businesses that create a special culture within. And obviously we're talking about some serious business here, but donation, obviously the challenges. How do you create, or can you share with me about the culture that you guys created here at DNA?
Absolutely. The mission at Donor Network of Arizona is to make the most of the gift of life. And by make the most, we really connect that to everything we do. No matter what area you work at in this organization, whether it's administration or finance or IT or clinically out in the field, our staff are striving to always make the most. We do that by really clearly defined clear values, which are positive energy, eagerness, and passion. And so we hire to those traits. That's when we go out and hire people. We want you to have at least two of those three traits, because the work we do is incredibly important. It saves lives. We're also stepping into the lives of families at the worst moment of their life when they've lost someone, to see if the generosity of donation connects with them. And we need really special people to do that work. People who understand that we're changing the story. We can change the story at the end of a person's life. I often talk about it as donation changes the end of a person's life from the story being the end of life, right, to the story being life going on. And it can be very powerful for everybody who works in that field, as well as for the families and other people touched by it.
Yeah, but it's how you frame it, right?
Right.
And I love the way you just articulated that. It's
Right.
like, don't think about it like she's gone and, her liver's gone to somebody. Like, think about it like she continues to live on. Like, because of her, it's almost like Vitalent's catchphrase, right? Because of you, life doesn't stop.
Right.
And the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, the skin, all of that could be the same thing. As we wrap up with you, I would be interested, and I know Steve loves a good story too, so we're going to be talking a little bit about Bob in a second. Can you reflect for just a moment on Bob's journey and Bob's story and kind of tee us up for that interview?
Sure. I mean, I think Bob has a story that many people can relate to. And he'll tell it to you, right? Someone walking through everyday life when something befalls them that really changes the trajectory of their life. And when that happens, right, people can pick themselves up by the bootstraps. People can lean on friends and family. What Bob needed, he couldn't pick himself up by the bootstraps and save his own life. He couldn't turn to his family or his friends or the people in his community. He needed to wait on the generosity of a stranger. The generosity of a stranger and a stranger's family who, when faced with the end of their loved one's life, said, we want life to come from this, not just death.
Is it hard? This is kind of a culture question, right? But is it hard because you deal with such a serious topic to be lighthearted at work? Is there still humor in the hallways? Is it possible to still laugh around this, and keep this light in moments where it needs to be?
It is incredibly important for us to be able to do that. And I think we really pride ourselves on cultivating fun and cultivating lightheartedness, recognizing that helps us do better at our very serious and important work.
Love it.
Yep.
Sarah Pace Jones, thank you.
So nice to meet you, both of you.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Being on with us today and helping us understand this. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to sit down with Bob. We're at DNR. He's got a DLR, double lung recipient. That's what they call him. He's a husband. He's a father. He had a little battle with COVID-19, and boom, everything changed. So we're going to sit down with him in just a minute and talk about those things. I want to give a couple of shout-outs to Amy Richardson at Savvy Realty Group, Keystone Montessori, and Bella Set Lingerie for sponsoring this episode. And Steve, if you're all right, we'll take a little break, grab a cup of coffee, and come back and chat with Bob.
Yes.
Wonderful.
All right. Love it. Thank you,
Thanks
Sarah.
again, Sarah.
Thank you.
What makes Bella Set Lingerie so unique? For starters, check out the vast selection and size range. Cups from A to K in styles like balcony, plunge, wireless, strapless, and more, including mastectomy and maternity bras. With superior customer service and free professional fittings, it's the go-to bra shop in the East Valley. Locally owned, with 2 locations in Ahwatukee and Gilbert. Check out our glowing reviews on Google and Yelp. Visit bellasetlingerie.com to learn more.
Move the Needle, episode number 19, Steve. We are here today at the Donor Network of Arizona. We got the hot seat here for real.
Yes. Can't wait to hear this story. This is what we waited for.
This is what we waited for. Bob Horbaczewski. Did I say the name right?
You were almost there. Horbaczewski.
Horbaczewski.
You got the back half, so that's what counts.
He's a double lung recipient.
Yes, sir.
Man, that sounds like a really complicated process.
Yeah, definitely. Lung transplant is an extremely difficult process. Everything about it, finding a match, the procedure, going through it, recovery, everything is extremely complicated with the lung transplants.
So obviously we have to back way up. We have to back way up, right?
Yeah. I mean, we want to know. I mean, the first question comes to mind. We were going with Sarah about how long people waited. That's what it to me like. How long were you waiting?
Well, I want to go back before that even.
Okay,
I want to go back and say, at what moment did you start to recognize that there was trouble? What was happening?
Yes.
So my story is a little different than probably a majority of people that get a lung transplant.
All right, let's go.
What happened with me is in December of 2020, my whole family got COVID. So prior to that, never had any health complications, was a gym rat, was a Division I athlete, lived in the gym, we ate healthy, we all kind of lived that lifestyle. But in 2020, like a lot of families, we caught COVID. The majority of my family didn't have anything. My son, my youngest daughter, you couldn't even tell they had COVID. Everybody else kind of had the flu-like symptoms, but for me, I had the critical reaction. So on December 17th of 2020, I woke up at about 2-3 o'clock in the morning and was just struggling breathing. I'd been sleeping downstairs because it was kind of hard to rest. Didn't really realize everything that was going on. So I went upstairs, and just the climb up the stairs was just unbelievably taxing. Got to my wife, woke her up, told her we need to go to the hospital. When I got into the hospital, my oxygen was down at 70%. So saying goodbye to her at the ER doors was the last time I saw my wife.
Yeah, that's right, because people weren't coming in and out of the hospitals.
We thought
then.
that she would at least be able to come in
No
to
chance.
triage, and they were like, no,
No
just the
chance.
patient. So once I got to triage and they found that out, they shot me right up. But over the course of a week or so, I just progressed downward. So
and we're coming up on Christmas, dude. Like
I know.
December 17th. Like we're coming up on Christmas.
Yeah, terrible Christmas present for me. But,
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, so I over the course of a week, the interventions for my oxygen went up and up, but I just wasn't recovering. Eventually, on Christmas Day, I had to get intubated, sent down to the ICU. Over the next 2 months, I got transferred to a different hospital, put on ECMO, which is basically your blood's being oxygenated by a machine outside of your body. So I had to go to a different hospital, get that done. Was put into an induced coma for about 2 months.
Wait,
And
2 months?
oh yes, sir. So I was at that
Bob.
bad of a stage. So COVID just ravaged my lungs.
Yes.
When I eventually was able to come out of that and attempt the recovery, my lungs were at a point where they wouldn't recover. So my only option was to get on the organ donation list and to have somebody find a pair of lungs that would match with me, or else I wouldn't be here talking to you. So for me, when I woke up in about mid-February, I had no idea like how bad I had progressed. But I was intubated, had a trach, couldn't talk. My wife, they had just started letting people back into the hospital. So luckily, when I woke up, the first person I got to see was my wife. And
That's nice.
that was amazing. And I was so concerned for my family because, like, last thing I remember, I was in the hospital and then here I am in a new place, intubated, and I'm like, can barely move from having been in the coma.
What does that? I wonder. What does that feel like waking up from?
I was thinking the same
from
thing.
a
Does it
2-month
feel
nap?
like 2 years?
It was honestly just
2 months?
completely disorienting because it's.
Really?
I remember the first time it really hit me, ironically enough, was on a Sunday, going to put on football and realizing that all that had passed me by, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like I really had just lost 2 months of my life, but my family, unfortunately, had been going through potentially losing me during those 2
Scary
months.
times.
So yeah. So luckily, afterwards, I had the ECMO come out, which was extremely frightening because that's in your artery. But they were able to stop the bleeding, save my life, and then within a week from that time, they were able to get me on the transplant list, find a pair of lungs, and get me transplanted. So my wait time, probably not like most people's, but was an absolute miracle that somebody was selfless enough to put themselves as an organ donor and that we were a match, and their choice to do that saved my life and gave my family all this extra time that we've had since
I have a
then.
million questions. Go ahead.
I want to know what's that like what's that feeling like when you knew you were in bad shape and you got that call? What?
So I wasn't really aware
I would
when
think
all
equal
of those
parts,
things happened.
equal parts
So-
everything.
Interesting.
So I knew when I woke up where I was as far as with my lungs. So
Okay.
I knew my only option at that point was to get a transplant. And when I was going through that, it was, we need to get you into physical therapy. We need to get you more mobile. We need to get your progress growing so that you can get on the transplant list and do that. And prior to that, when the last thing that I had remembered, like around Christmas time, was really feeling my mortality. Like I knew where I was as my oxygen was going down, and the only thing that really went through my mind at that point was, I just want more time with my family. I want more time. And you realize at that point, the only real currency you have in life is time. That's the most valuable thing. You can't ever get it back, and every bit that you're given is unbelievably priceless. So when I was in the hospital fighting for that chance, that's all I wanted. I wanted to do anything I could so that I'd give myself an opportunity. And then really the going from when that ECMO came out, I have little bits that I remember, but I remember waking up after the transplant, and that was just amazing because it really was night and day from what I was going through then to waking up and knowing that as long as I'm putting in the hard work and the effort every day, I'm giving myself a chance for extra time every single day.
Yeah,
that I'm here.
I love that. My question probably would have been better for your family.
Yeah.
When they got the word, because they're on the sidelines, probably frantic.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can only imagine what they had to go through. I know we faced a lot of trauma during that time because my wife at the time was 38, never expecting to be a widow. My kids were in high school, graduating high school, starting kindergarten, and they're faced with dad may not come home. And so they're just sitting there every day wondering what's going to happen. And I can only imagine when that idea of dad's getting a lung transplant actually settles in, and now we have hope, as opposed to that tragedy that everybody was facing prior to that.
Well, and I was suggesting that it's equal parts, right? Like, yes, there is hope. Like, okay, we get to do this, but okay, let's be real. Now the real work starts, right? Because you've been in a coma for 2 months, so I'm guessing muscles have deteriorated.
Completely atrophied.
You're walking. You're learning to kind of walk again, and,
like a newborn.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's all these little steps that you have to kind of baseline yourself with, and on top of that, you get this new organ in your body. So the body's got to be in a good, healthy place to accept it. I mean, that's a real ordeal, man. I would say that you've been handed this incredible perspective on life.
Yes, definitely. Just with that, the recovery, it's for me, especially having been in the coma and then coming through that and having to recover, it really was like being a newborn and having to relearn. You have to relearn how to swallow at a point because of having the trach in and having to re-strengthen everything in there. You have to... I was at a point where just lifting my arm this much was a struggle at first. So having to completely regain strength in all of that. Walking was one of the scariest things. I remember in my physical therapy, just getting up, like sitting up on my own was a struggle. And then eventually they'd have you in a walker, basically, where you've got your arms rested and you're starting to build that strength up. But the first time they're like, okay, now you're going to walk on your own, and you haven't done it in like 3 or 4 months, and your body's trying to figure it out. And you'd never think that walking was such a difficult thing until you haven't done it and your whole body has to relearn it.
Well, somebody told me, it was our friend, the cardiologist, Dr. Robert Todd Hurst, that suggests that, people lose between 1 and 3 pounds of muscle when they're just lying in a hospital bed. This is like every couple of days you lose this muscle. And so I would imagine you atrophied quite a bit.
Oh, yes. When I first went to the hospital to post-surgery, I had lost about 80 pounds.
That's what I'm thinking.
Over the course of it. And
Incredible.
I remember my wife told me a story one time when they finally got me into regular clothes and I was up in the wheelchair. She had walked by my hospital room and kept walking because she had no idea that was me, because she was just like, who? Oh, and then she had to come back and be like, oh my gosh, that's my husband.
That's
and
insane.
It, like, even with like my kids, when they saw me the first time, it was a whole different person that I had to like completely rebuild and recover from.
And imagine that weeks before Christmas, everything's
Days,
fine.
buddy.
You're at the gym, right? I mean, this isn't a lifetime of struggles. This is somebody who's at the gym. That's
well, that was always my beat on COVID.
Humbling.
Was that you can say what you want, you can think what you want, but the bottom line, the thing we can all agree on, is that it hit everybody differently.
Right.
There was not very many people who had the exact same identical experience. And case in point, right here. Let's fast forward to transplant day. So you guys find out you're on the transplant list. What is that window between when you find out and when the surgery takes place?
So that would be more of a question from my wife, because for me it was literally, I have these little bits of memory from when I was at the hospital where I had the ECMO to waking up post-surgery. Like, I don't really know what it was like having to go through all those things. I know the actual process for the doctors, and getting the lungs is very timely and very like, when they find a pair, they have to fly out, they have to check them, they have to bring them back, they have to check them when they're there. Everything has to go exactly right for the transplant to happen. So it's a very timely and not an exact thing where it's just like, oh, hey, here's lungs, we can go put them in. Like, a lot of things have to line up, and the surgery is not like a 1 hour surgery, we're done. It's a long process.
Do you have like this gnarly scar on your stomach now, man?
All the way across.
Is it go all the way across?
Basically, the way they kind of explain the surgery is it's like opening the hood of a car. So they cut into you, crack you open, and remove and replace.
Did you ever see the old lungs?
Yeah, we have pictures of them, and they are, you want to talk about gnarly, those are gnarly. They were gray, they had holes in them, they just were completely destroyed.
How big are they?
I don't know.
Size of your hand, maybe?
I imagine they're probably a little bit bigger because it's in your chest.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I just, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I know the audience out there listening to this story, a lot of people feel like, obviously, thinking of second chances in life.
Mm-hmm.
Are you one of those that, feels like since you've come out of this is it's a newfound life? Tell me about a little bit about that.
This is the gimme, right?
Yeah, this is like...
So I've always been one who kind of tries to live in the moment and be present in what it is, but I would say this experience has solidified that about how, like I said, like really, and I've talked to some other donor recipients about this, and you really do have this idea that most people just can't really hold on to, of that value of time, like the currency of time. And when you go through something like this, it solidifies how you feel. So when you wake up and you're having a bad day, you're still having a day. And when you're having an argument, you're still having an interaction with that person. So it doesn't matter if when I'm with my wife, if we're having a good day or a bad day, it's another day we get together. It's more memories we get to make with each other. With my kids, it doesn't matter whether they're the most obnoxious kids in the world or they're doing amazing things. It's memories and time that I get to have to watch them grow and to have those experiences with them, to be with them. So I've always felt like that's an important thing, is being present in the moment and being with people. But going through this has really solidified that. And the things that I would usually kind of blow off and put to the side of myself, I don't do as much. So now my time is even more precious to me, where I just kind of embrace what's in front of me every day, because realistically, even still for me, even with having the transplant, there's any day that I could catch a cold and infection can lead to rejection. So I know that every day I'm given is a blessing. So every day that I wake up and I get to spend time with my family, with the people who care about me, is a blessing for me. So I live it to the fullest, whatever that is.
What is your care like for the rest of your life, speaking of?
So I'm on immunosuppressant drugs. So basically what that means is to make sure that my body doesn't attack my lungs, which it's doing every day. I take specific drugs that takes my immune system all the way down as far as it can go without compromising it to a point where like things would shut down. So it's like dropped to the very basement. So I have to be really careful about how I interact with people. When we go out, if we're in any sort of crowded indoor areas, we're wearing masks now. We just have to be more aware of if we're at gatherings, if people are sick, if they have symptoms, because like I said, anything that can come towards me can lead to rejection. So it's more so like that, of being even more cautious. For like my daily life, it's just that I have to be a lot more aware of what I'm doing. I used to always get the dag cuts, walking around, doing things around the house, and I got, scratch, whatever. So now if something like that happens, I have to be a lot more mindful of it. I have to make sure it's clean, it's cared for. We lose out on time with things if we have family events or things like that, and someone's sick, we have to cancel it. We can't go. We have to be a little more mindful of where we go and what we do, and kind of assess like What's the risk reward?
The new normal.
Yeah.
The
So
new normal.
we have a different normal than what we had before, but we always look at it as, we're built to do hard things. So we take on these challenges because that's what we're here for. So it's our normal, but it's what makes us strong and capable as we go through the day and take on these challenges.
To me, it sounds like a really strong sense of appreciation. Really, I mean, it emanates from you. And I think that's really what, as far as this moving on since then, when I sitting next to you, it sounds like you lived in the present, but now it's just a little different.
Oh yeah, it's much more refined. So, everything, and it's not like every day is a great day. Like I have really bad days. I wake up some days and my body's just not working with me. So even those days, as hard as it is, it's just a challenge that you have to face, and you cut out the unnecessary things in life and focus on what matters to you, and whatever comes with your day, and you just move forward.
All right, final word from you, Bob. We have somebody listening right now that's considering being an organ donor. What do you say that pushes people over the edge?
So I'll kind of tell you the same thing every time Donate Life asks me to come talk. The thing that I always look at with organ donation is at that end of life, right? That's one of the most tragic things. If you're losing somebody, there's no way around that. It's going to be a tragic moment. But it's a really simple decision. If you choose to be an organ donor, it's such a selfless decision. And you can take a moment that is steeped in tragedy and you can turn it into a legacy of giving, because you're not just giving and having this legacy for the one person who might get one of the organs that you can donate. It's the wife. It's the mother or father. It's the children, the friends. It's all the people that this person that receives this gift of life that carries on from your legacy. So it's just a selfless decision, and it's so meaningful to so many people that if you're considering it, just look at that. Look at the idea of taking something so tragic as the loss of one life and turning it into something so magical and selfless to not just another life, but so many lives that it impacts with that one choice.
So then I think the final question is, do you have any connection with the person that offered up their lungs to you?
I really wish we did. We are in one of those unique situations where unfortunately our donor didn't have any family around and was an anonymous donor, so we never got to know specifically who our donor was. So that's one of the things with my story where I really do look at it as a miracle, because it's just this selfless person that we have
just popped out of the sky, man.
We have this just angel out of nowhere that made this choice in their life and was in the perfect situation where they were able to be a donor for us at this absolute worst time in our family's life completely. And their one choice, making that one decision in their life that, hey, you know what, I'll be an organ donor, has kept my wife from being a widow, kept my 5-year-old from going to school every day screaming at the world, why is this happening? How is this fair? To now waking up telling me how much she loves that I'm here and she's glad every day that I'm alive.
Yeah.
Because of one person's selfless choice, all of these lives are so greatly affected.
So well said.
Yeah.
So well said.
It got you a little emotional. I can see it in your eyes.
I mean, it's life. It's we're not talking. It's life. We're not talking about something willy-nilly. Again, like you know, everybody has kids. Everybody has friends, family, moms, dads. So I think it's an amazing story.
Yeah,
thank you. I
brings
appreciate
it all
that.
Home. Bob, thank you so much
I
for
appreciate
stopping
it.
by, man, and
Thank
being
you.
on our
Thank you,
podcast
Bob.
today.
Thank you. Appreciate
We're
it.
going to take another really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to bring it all home with Rhiannon here on the Move the Needle podcast. See you in a minute. Welcome back to our Move the Needle podcast. We're here today at Donor Network of Arizona, and this has been an eye-opening conversation so far for me, Steve. I don't know about you.
Our most serious one of yet. Obviously had somebody whose life was saved, and we haven't had that yet. So I would say we're leveling up on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We're covering more important topics than how good's the pizza.
That's for sure.
Right,
But that's
right.
good too. But
Yeah.
this is
So
different.
we're going to move on now to the Director of Tissue Services at Donor Network of Arizona. She's been here, 21, 22 years?
22 years.
22 years. Hold that microphone nice and close to your mouth if you don't mind. But Rhiannon Knueven.
Yep.
That is how you say it. The K is silent.
Okay, so
Brilliant. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
So you sort of run in a little different lane than Sara does, and you and I were just talking before we started, and your focus here at Donor is a little bit more like eyes, skin, and then you said placenta, and I want to talk about that in a little bit, but let's start with the first two. So what is your role here?
So I'm the Director of Tissue Services. I've been with the organization for 22 years. I started as a per diem part-time employee, and so I work with the tissue recovery team. So what that does entail, it's the bone recovery, the skin recovery, heart for valves. We do saphenous and femoral veins, so a lot of the cardiovascular tissue types. And then in addition to that, we have a placenta program that we started in 2018 as well. So moms that are having scheduled C-sections can donate their placenta.
Okay, why would somebody want to donate their placenta? What would be the benefit of that to somebody else?
It has antimicrobial purposes, so a lot of it's for diabetic ulcers. It has great healing properties, so it's used as kind of a magical Band-Aid. It's for wound care, essentially. You can use it for dental procedures. It's kind of a long list of things that it can be used for, but otherwise, if not donated, it's medical waste. It's discarded.
That is unbelievably fascinating that the placenta can be used for so many different things. And any woman who has a C-section, who has a placenta intact, would be eligible for this, or would they have to be a donor? They have to check that box too.
No, it's a conversation. So there's a medical and social screening questionnaire. There's a eligibility that they have to meet. So standard questions, kind of similar to what you would answer when you donate blood. And then if they meet that criteria, then anybody that's having a scheduled C-section would be eligible.
I think it's fascinating because I don't know if the masses are aware of that, right? But what's exciting to me is that some woman may be listening to this right now, or man for that matter, and be in a relationship with a pregnant woman, right? But to be able to tee up this conversation for that woman, if she knows she's going to, like for my wife, for example, we had an emergency C-section the first time, and then, of course, your scheduled C-section the second time. But I had no idea about this placenta.
Yeah.
It would have been great to know because I actually think my wife would have been down for something like that.
Same with me. I mean, we started this program in 2018. Obviously, my children are almost 15 and 11, so they're not. That was back then.
Yeah.
But I would have donated as well. Yeah.
Huh. All right, Steve, fire away.
Well, as far as like real life experience within the community, I know you work out there getting the word out. How does that happen? How does that happen as far as your community partnerships, I should say?
So we work very closely with our marketing team here at Donor Network of Arizona. So we have our placenta program has a brand, a logo, and pamphlets. We work with the OBGYN offices and then hospitals that we have relationships with as well. So a lot of it is through the hospital and the OBGYN offices.
What are who are some of your community partners that really help you move the needle in your space?
Banner Gateway, Banner Ocotillo, Banner UMC Phoenix. We really will go to any hospital that a mom is having a scheduled C-section at, essentially within Maricopa County. We have traveled outside of the county, but really those key target hospitals are our largest referral programs at this point. We do work with Banner Thunderbird, Banner Estrella, so we're on the east side, the west side, and central with Banner UMC.
What is your pain point? Like anybody who has any job in America, they have some sort of a pain point, something that they would love to get people to understand. What is that for you guys when you sit in meetings here at Donor and you're like, guys, what we need to do is make sure people know this. Is there an uphill that you guys are facing with regard to this situation?
I think it's all just the education. I
Okay.
think if more people were aware of what the potential is and the selfless gift that they can give, much like Vitalent with the blood donation, it's a altruistic gift. It takes a minimal amount of time. It's life saving, just like donation. It's life saving, life enhancing. The tissue side is referred to more of life enhancing. We do have some grafts that are life saving. Obviously, the organ side is life saving. But it's just getting the word out and knowledge and understanding. I think there's some misconceptions, like you talked to Sara about what happens during the process, and I think if there's an understanding, it would work well.
Are there people who cannot donate any organs or tissue or any are there diseases and such that would show up and kind of take you off a list?
For the tissue donation side and the eye recovery side, we are heavily regulated by a lot of regulatory bodies. So there's specific criteria that we do have to abide by.
What are some of those things?
Obviously, like infectious diseases,
Okay.
HIV, hepatitis, things
Okay.
like that are number one deferrals for donation. But really, it's not. Anybody can donate tissue up to 100 years of age. So 18 months to 100 years of age is eligible for donation.
Huh. And then you mentioned the eyes. Walk us through that situation. How, people can get just a new eye put in?
Cornea recovery.
Okay.
So it's a cornea
Forgive
recovery.
me, I don't know much about this world. Yeah?
It's a cornea recovery that happens, and it's a cornea transplant. So we work collaboratively with another group across the states, and we recover corneas. They process and distribute those back for transplant locally, domestically, internationally, for those that need to restore sight.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm sitting in silence because I'm just being educated. I didn't know really any of that existed. I mean, especially the placenta. And I mean,
It's fascinating,
yeah,
isn't
I
it?
had no idea.
And I have to make this terrible joke for a second, but I think when you get that cornea replacement, you see things different.
Much clearer, yeah. You can see it much clearer.
That's worth the price of admission.
Okay, I like it.
You got it. You
I
see
like
it through somebody else's eyes now.
See it
You see it
through
through somebody
else's
else's
lens.
eyes.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
you do.
it's cool, and I love that there's so many people out there that this is a no-brainer for. For me, since I've been 16, it's a no-brainer. I don't even think about it. My mom tragically died last year. She was an organ donor, but she wasn't healthy enough for her organs to be recycled or upcycled or whatever the terminology is with all of those things. But I know she would have loved to have left that legacy, so to speak, with folks. Okay, skin. How do we work with skin? Because a few people have mentioned it now. Sara did. Well, Bob didn't, but you did.
So skin is used, has a number of applications as well. It's very similar to placenta, just different, obviously, sizes. But skin can be used for mastectomy, following mastectomy, so breast reconstruction, post-mastectomy, hernia repairs.
The mesh lining that goes inside. Makes perfect sense.
Bladder sling, same thing. It has uses for dental procedures. There's you name it, they pretty much have figured out how to use it.
That is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Here, you may not know the answer to this question. We've heard about animal animal parts being donated, pig hearts
Porcine,
and horses,
bovine,
well, all this stuff, right? What is the difference between some of those things in terms of what you know?
So, with the tissue side, it's an allograft. It's considered an allograft. It goes from one person to another.
Okay.
There's not. I'm not as versed with the bovine or the porcine grafts. We do work with a group that is doing some research and development when it comes to different types of valves and mechanical valves and that type of a transplant when it comes to heart. So one of the differences between tissue and organ transplant is that organ transplants the entire heart. We recover the entire heart for the purposes of the aortic and the pulmonary valves.
The valves.
The valves.
Yeah.
So that's one of the differences. But when you have a allograft, it's person to person. There's the anti-rejection medications are not necessary, which means the moms that are pregnant moms having babies don't need to have the blood thinners and stuff like that. So you don't want to have your child that just had a procedure performed running around the backyard and trip and cut themselves if they're taking blood thinners or something like that. So when you have those mechanical devices or other devices, a lot of times you have to have the blood thinners and stuff like that to keep them.
It's a short
regulated.
question, Rhiannon, but what is the greatest part of your job?
So my original plan was to go to medical school, and I started that path many years ago, and then I fell in love with this job. It's a lot of doing kind of essentially what you would do in medical school. You have the knowledge, something different every day. I learn something new pretty much every day that I work here. This organization is phenomenal. The people that we work with are incredible, and we have the opportunity to improve lives, save lives, to see the stories like Bob's story. We get to see those routinely, and that's what makes this job amazing.
Well, how about one more for our audience? We know Bob was here.
One more for the road.
One more for the road. Leave us with some inspiration. Somebody maybe fairly recently you've worked with that's recovered very well that you could share with our audience.
Somebody that I've worked as far as like my team.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a donor story that resonates with you?
Mm-hmm.
I have actually, my team specifically, I have several individuals on my team that have had allografts. So sports injuries, they've had a tendon restored in the knee. I have one of our post mastectomy, she had the skin grafts used. So we actually have individuals on our recovery team that recover this tissue that have actually had it as well. So it's nice to see it kind of come full circle. And then my mom passed away, and she was actually a cornea donor. She's older age, so she wasn't eligible for the other tissue types, but she was actually a cornea donor.
Sorry to hear that, but that's again amazing gift
Yeah.
That everybody gives.
For sure. Like somebody else gets to keep seeing because of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a neat thing.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's the reason you do this, is so that you can find some way to like keep it going, keep the cycle going for everybody else,
Yeah,
right?
I hope people get that message because, again, I was one maybe, I have to look into it. I don't really even know what my status is, but it's given me a different perspective today in the seriousness and, again, sitting next to somebody that's been given the gift of life. We've had somebody on a show prior that's given, Tammy Butcher in Chandler.
That's right,
yeah, so
that's right. I forgot about
she's
that.
given a gift of kidney, and so we actually have now we're kind of really dialed into this situation. So I have to roll my sleeves up.
Yeah,
and
you
I have
do.
to find out.
Let's
it's
go,
serious
man.
business.
Just find out.
Yeah.
We just went through this with my son. He's 16, just got his driver's license, and we had this whole conversation about, are you going to be an organ donor? And, he's a 16-year-old boy. He was like, I don't know, Dad. It seems weird, right? Like, what happens? And I was like, just kept saying to him, you won't be here to have an opinion about it. Like, if we get to that stage where we're taking out your organs, you're not really, you don't have a rebuttal at that stage of the game, man. So let's just do the right thing. Let's make sure somebody else can keep going. If for some tragic reason you're taken from us too early, that feels like the right thing.
Boy, that's a good dad. Boy, good conversation. That's for sure.
I don't know, man. We're trying, aren't we?
It's nice to have that decision known in advance in case, like you said, if something tragic happens and then you're not put in that place to take a guess.
Right.
Would he have wanted to? Would he have not?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And maybe he doesn't know fully what he's gotten himself into yet, but he will. He'll come to understand the importance of this conversation.
Yeah, and I believe you sharing the story that literally multiple people on your team needing the service, to me, leads our audience to inspiration right there, that it's that widespread.
Yeah.
That they probably know somebody now that needs that type of help. Statistically.
So, Rhiannon, what's a good way to get connected with Donor and to get in, sort of involved in what's happening here?
So our website, you can go to Donor Network of Arizona's website, dnaz.org. We have a phone number, all the information about all of the services that we offer, donor family services, kind of the aftercare and support that goes into the recipients like Bob. It's all on the website. And then
so that's a good first place to start.
And then the registration in the MVD is another next step to start checking the box.
Well, my goal is for everybody to make sure, number one, see if you're a donor, and number two, if you're not, pray on it, meditate on it, figure out if that's the right thing for you, and if it is, let's go.
Yeah. And also big shout out to Vitalent
Yes.
as well. Let's keep the blood coming. We just another holiday season went, and I know that they expend a lot. We've learned that, and so time to get that going as well. So.
Yes, and a special shout out to Anna from Vitalent and her whole team. They kind of roped us into the donor situation, and we couldn't be happier that they did.
Yeah.
You guys are a great organization doing great things, and thank you for letting us come and crash your party today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, no sweat. All right, man. Well, that's it. 19's in the books. 19 will go down in history as being the one that got everybody to become an organ donor.
I love it. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, and maybe myself. I don't know. I have to find out. Yeah. If I wasn't, I will be.
Go look into it. We want to say thanks to Amy Richardson from the Savvy Realty Group
Yes.
for sponsoring today's episode, Keystone Montessori for sponsoring today's episode, and of course Bella Set Lingerie and Awatuki for sponsoring this episode. If you've not visited any of our sponsors, please dive into what they're doing. Without their support, we couldn't even get up and do this every day.
Thank
so we're
them.
grateful.
Absolutely. Honor them.
Yeah,
Local
for sure.
businesses. So
And a special thanks to you, Rhiannon, for being on. Bob, thank you for being on the podcast. And Sarah Pace Jones. We are next week going to be, our next episode is going to be live from the Kiln in Gilbert, where we're going to be hanging out with 100 plus women who care.
yes, and followed up a couple days later in Scottsdale. Back to Scottsdale, Craft 64.
Best
Downtown
pizza ever.
Yes. That's what El Presidente said. So
Okay. All right, man. We'll see everybody next time on our Move the Needle podcast. Have a great day, Steve.
thank you. You
Peace.
too.